debt. But by state statute, right now it's 3%.
They just raised it, Robert. They
right.
doubled it.
It was 2% a couple, like year before last, and they raised it to 3%. But under that statute, Maplewood is only obligated. That under that statute is like less between $1 and $2 million. Yeah.
I thought it didn't go from 1 to 2.
No,
1% to
2 to 3.
1 2 to 3.
Right, but that's unobligated debt. So there's two different kinds of debt. Robert, what you're talking about is a debt like the open space debt or the fire department certificates for
like bonding.
That type of bonding that's not supported, not with debt service like for street projects, because that's debt that's obligated, that's required when the council assess at least 20%, and that's called unobligated debt. The majority of our debt is unobligated. A lot of the debt, I mean, 1/3 of the debt is simply assessments to residents. As you say, pay as you go, then you're asking residents who got assessed for their projects to pay 100% of the cost.
No, and I understand that.
So you can't ask somebody to pay that.
No, and I understand that, and I've thought about that too. That chunk of that debt is actually things that are billed back to somebody else.
Correct.
And with that billing back is also the cost of that debt. I mean, if a street project costs $5 million, and over the life of that, there's another $1 million in debt service, that becomes the debt also goes back to the residents that are assessed for that project. Correct?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Mr. Whitecop.
Well, could the city ever try to make money instead of spend money and maybe invest into billboards, the lighted ones, I forget what they call them, diamond or
Dynamic, just
dynamic, and then sell advertising to businesses and make money that way for the city?
Well, you know what, that's an idea. And I would say that once the Economic and Development Authority starts convening, bring up that idea to the Economic and Development Authority, because that might be the correct board to act on that idea.
You know, like I said, you know,
If I might comment, I mean, we don't want to compete with private industry as a government. I mean, that's not our role. I mean, and you could debate back and forth whether we should or shouldn't, and whether we do in some cases or not. But in most cases, we're prohibited from going out into the marketplace and doing those types of things.
So right now you kind of do.
Right, and there are some cases where it's definitely gray, I agree.
Well, the thing is that the issue is that can the city maybe lease the space for somebody who owns dynamic signs
Exactly.
to place their dynamic sign there, and we lease them the land on city land, and that's the way you create that income.
The other one, as the mayor points out, you pointed out, I think the mayor has been aware that, I mean, we have a dynamic display sign at the MCC. Should we be advertising Pepsi or Coke on that sign? Is that what you want your tax dollars to do, to help pay for that sign? There's a debate back and forth. Should it be Pepsi? Should it be Coke? Should that be on that sign? As you drive down White Bear Avenue, do you want to see Pepsi or Coke advertised on that city billboard?
Or do you want to, or do you want to,
Policy
or do
issue
you
for
want to
debate.
advertise Maplewood businesses that, you know, that they advertise on?
It's a way to make money.
Well, let's take it, and when we do this, you know, not only for the signage, we might as well put up a few cell towers, and then they can put the signage right on the cell towers, and we can make the place look real good. And maybe during the holiday season, we could put a little festivity lighting up.
In the shape of a tree.
We could create some real visual effects
You know,
around
that
here.
sounds like a great idea.
This one's got a teapot water tower.
you know,
Or coffee
John,
pot water
oh,
tower.
go ahead, man. I want to go
Yeah, go ahead.
I was out of the room when you were talking about road improvements and that. Did you mention anything about Highway 36 in English?
No, I did not.
Any input on that?
We have a $7 million federal appropriation that we're working on that we hope to get for a 2015 construction
Mhm.
of that.
I was
We will find out in
concerned with that.
February for sure whether we get that one. So that would make that an interchange and remove the city. So it would.
I thought it was gonna be sooner.
And, you know, the federal money doesn't become available until 2015, then the council would try to decide whether they want to advance it. And then they would be using bonding to advance the project, otherwise the $7 million becomes available in 2015.
Was anything discussed about plowing?
No, but, go ahead.
I've noticed, particularly this year and also last year, but particularly this year, I could always count on plowing on Sophia and Edward by the north end of Lake Phelan from 6:30 on in the morning. I never had to worry about getting out. For some reason this year, Sophia was plowed, Edward was never touched till 3 days later. I noticed the same thing with Phelan Place. Part of Phelan was plowed, the part of the other Phelan that is between Ripley and Sophia was not. For some reason, Frank behind me was plowed. It was kind of sporadic. I was surprised when they were doing some of that, they weren't spreading down any sand or salt. And I live at the top of a hill. I have Sophia coming up like this.
Right.
Al and I had gone to the city and called a couple of times, and we finally got it rectified a few years ago. When they're coming up the hill, we're the only driveway there. Everything gets pushed in back in that driveway that we had already shoveled out. And a nice man was coming up and banking it and then coming up again, which alleviated. Now the last couple of years it's not being done again. And it's really, really tough. Can we come to accommodations where it could be banked again and not shoved all the way up?
We may have a new driver, let me check with our.
Would you? I really
see what we
appreciate
can do.
that.
If nothing else, I'll have them give you a call and they'll stop by.
Okay.
But
I
yeah,
tried to get his attention
we
the
do
other
that.
day,
We
and
do that where we can, and
I
it should be, but it might be a new
I tried to
driver.
flag him down, I didn't get his attention.
Right,
Yeah, because boy, do we get it.
yeah, okay, let me check on it. Somebody
And nothing
will
like
touch
getting
it.
the whole hill full of
Right.
snow right there in the
We've
front of
got
the
it,
driveway.
yeah, it just comes right
Right.
up.
We do that in certain cases where people call, and I think Elizabeth, your mother called, and we do some certain ways that we plow on their street where they say, well, in their case, put it in this lot, not here.
Yeah.
And we do that, and so
Put it in the
all we
neighbor's
do.
driveway,
Yeah.
not mine.
Yeah, John, we won't do that. We don't put it in somebody's driveway.
It- It's bad because it's a hill,
Right.
and,
We will
it would be
do, I'll
greatly
check on that on
appreciated, yeah.
Monday and have somebody give you a call.
Now, John, to make a comment on your suggestion using municipal resources for private advertising. I've seen case studies and court cases that gets into city deciding who the municipality deciding to advertise. I mean, putting advertising on police cars and stuff like that. It's like there are cases where there's some folks that you don't want to be associated with the city have requested advertising, and it's gone up to higher court cases. Like, like we're targeting the Salvation Army. Now, Salvation Army can't work Target stores. It's the same instance. You can't deny one and then not deny another group. So that's why a lot of cities just stay out of that using city resources for money-making ventures.
But if you want to buy an ad, you get advertising.
But I'm
If
just
you don't
saying.
want one, you don't get it.
Right,
But,
it's
okay,
how
let's
you
say-
structure it.
There have been cases where, like, back in the day, the Ku Klux Klaners had made request advertising for the meeting. I mean, no, I'm sitting there.
Okay, they did.
No, I mean, but, you can't deny them and deny, the Christian leadership thing. I mean, it gets all in.
Robert, what
For the
you're-
$5 you're gonna get advertised, it could cost you a whole lot more.
Robert, what you're saying is the city, the residents ought to know the true cost of their government and ought to pay for it. We shouldn't find all these, I'm gonna call them
Schemes?
devious ways to generate money, that's not the purpose of the city. And, I would hate to see any city go down this road where they expand this endless array of advertisements. I look at those as visual blights. And the more we can eliminate it, because when this guy puts up a sign this big, the next guy's got to put one up a little bigger and a little
Sign
bigger.
pollution.
And pretty soon, you're totally inundated dilapidated, and all the efforts of Ron Cockriel in parks and open space seem to get hid behind a big billboard.
Except entrepreneurs depend on signage.
No. Governments don't operate as free markets and capitalism. They operate as monopolies.
Go ahead.
Question for Chuck about the new roundabout over on Sharon. Like I'm saying, my brother-in-law, who's 87, lives there at the homestead, and he goes out walking all the time. And the street is real narrow around the roundabout, and he said there are so many cars that are going the wrong way around that. They have not, not gotten used to that. I don't know, is there any way of improving the signage? He said he's had to jump out of the way, and like I said, he's not a
Because they're
young
taking
man.
the shortcut, you see, because it is very obvious that if you go that way, you only have to go this distance
Yeah,
rather than
rather
going all the
than-
way around to go that way. So you see, it's a shortcut.
It's a
So,
different-
so people are looking both ways
Yeah.
to see no cars are coming.
Yeah.
No one's gonna care if I take the shortcut.
Have you actually
And so-
seen somebody do that?
Yes, yes. And they're taking the shortcut. I can tell you that, no, I can tell you that because the way it's
Do you ever see
constructed.
semis try to get
Here,
around there?
here I thought one of the bolts fell out of the sign and it just went upside down and you're.
Oh, you followed this up.
So anyway, but Mr. Waters, did you have any last minute subjects?
The only thing, since Chuck's here, is on the east side of Hazelwood and Jarvis, did you come up that hill with, when we had this little ice storm that came through, that it was all icy? I don't know if you can have your guys double check that by throwing some more sand
More
down.
on there.
Yeah.
Somebody already called on that, and I thought we hit it again New Year's Eve.
I wasn't sure.
Okay.
Because last week someone come sliding through and going, "You idiot, why don't you slow down?" Well, guess who was the second person sliding through there?
Okay.
So.
I think we hit it, but I'll put it on the list.
It's just because they're coming up that hill and
Yeah.
it's slight
No, it
inclines,
goes
they
back
tend
down there.
they tend to speed.
Somebody called on that.
And maybe
one.
while there's snow plowing, they could just snow plow that pork chop on there, right?
Yeah, that would be
Just
nice.
scrape it right on.
No, speaking of, that is another thing, when you're plow drivers, I appreciate them opening up the driveway or opening up the street, but they put a big ice ball in front of my driveway. So I've got a narrow opening right now, so at least the temperature goes up, and I can get it out. So if they come by, they have to just kind of stop at the
Slide that
mailbox.
out of there.
Yeah.
Sidewalks. I was always under this thing that you have a sidewalk in front of your house, you're responsible, you belong to the city to shovel, is that correct? Or has that changed, that law?
We have that on the books. We don't enforce it because we clear the sidewalks ourselves as a city.
Well, if you go down English Street between 36 and to the roundabout, there's some homes that have not shoveled. And I've had people walking out to get back on the street to find them, get back onto the walkway.
Well, that is one sidewalk that we do clean, but our piece of equipment broke down. And then because of the ice, we couldn't get out there with our pickups and try to clean it because we couldn't get the traction.
They're gonna put a snow
Yeah,
blade
it's
on the
a
new
problem.
golf cart, they're gonna use that to plow it.
Too cold.
It's all ice, it's just breaking the equipment.
Yeah.
So we're working on it. I think we got a crew out even today that we're paying. So we're trying to get them as clean as possible. But the rain and the ice just broke all the
So
equipment.
you clean all of that then, the city?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yeah, we're trying to do it within 48 hours.
Talking about the roundabouts, are they still killing the middle of that and putting pine trees and stuff in those?
Yes.
That's a stupid idea.
You can't see across.
And
Well,
no, you can see this way, but people that aren't used to that, they'll come up and they'll stop. And if they see any car around, they sit there until that thing
Yeah.
is completely empty. Then you have to tell them,
Yeah.
and when they're not used to it.
But isn't that to keep the lights from coming straight across? And that's, so,
Well, it's also to get you to focus. You're not to focus across. You're to
Does
focus
other
on your
roundabouts-
merge.
And I guess
Then they have
Yeah.
to pay maintenance for it.
well, at the
Can you
design
then
review
clean out
board, I
their
know
weeds?
when I was on the design review board and we had to review the landscaping in the middle of the one there in Gladstone and everything, my experiences in the Bahamas and in Europe and everywhere else I've traveled, where there's roundabouts like that, is that they're clear in the middle so you can see who's coming in, so you can all gauge your speed as you're going.
Yeah.